This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day, and that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
So good, so good, so good.
New markdowns up to 70% off are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Fresh kicks, spring tops, new dresses. There's always a score.
I mean, the denim section is unreal.
Why do I rack? All the dresses.
I always find something amazing.
Head to your Nordstrom Rack store to find can't-miss deals on all the spring things. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
Alrighty, happy Friday, everybody out there. Hope you're enjoying what is soon to be your weekend. Again, a lot of great things coming out of the NFL Combine still as we enter to the workouts and a lot of the televised workouts. We'll see when drills start happening with quarterbacks, receivers, tight ends, and so on and so forth. But within that, the rumor mill continues to turn, and the San Francisco 49ers continue to be one of the hottest topics on the rumor mill, mainly surrounding that of the likes of Deebo Samuel. Will they trade him? Will they not trade him? Will they have to cut him? Who could be a potential destination for him in 2025, in the next month or so, when they actually have to move off of him this offseason? But before we get to that, I want to talk about two very minor updates, one of them being about Dre Greenlaw, and I think a lot of Niner fans will love this, because I can tell you now, if there is a impending free agent on this team that almost everybody collectively says has to be re-signed this offseason, it is Dre Greenlaw. We know San Francisco is kind of in this recalibration period, retooling period, if you believe what John Lynch said a couple days ago at his press conference. But according to Matt Barros of The Athletic, via the 49ers Plus and Minus podcast with Tim Kawakami, he said this, that Robert Saleh, the returning Niners defensive coordinator, has been putting on, and I quote here, a full court press by making calls to Dre Greenlaw daily and trying to get him to come back to San Francisco this year. When you hear that, I'm sure you jump for joy and say, yes, bring Dre Greenlaw back to the Bay. There's unfinished business, and it certainly feels like Robert Saleh feels the exact same way. Hey, Dre, I'm back. Let's get some sort of the band back together. I want to at least have you for 1 year, and let's not forget this. I wouldn't be shocked to see that Robert Saleh wants to get Greenlaw back in San Francisco to hopefully, if he leaves in 1 year's time in his case, maybe take Dre Greenlaw with him elsewhere in 2026. So there is an effort, a full court press effort to get Greenlaw back in the red and gold this coming season. However, is it the right move to bring back Dre Greenlaw? Emotionally, yes. Energy-wise, of course. Everything about Dre Greenlaw is everything you want a San Francisco 49er to be. Dre Greenlaw really encompasses everything Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch and even Robert Saleh look for when they're drafting or trying to sign players. Yet the injury is a major concern. I have told you plenty of times, an incentive-laden deal, $6 million. If you want to make 10, we can get you there, but you got to prove to us that you can stay healthy for an entire year. Although, if you believe what Barrows is saying here, he also says that Dre Greenlaw will likely still hit the open market, which again could help San Francisco in their case to get Greenlaw on a relatively cheaper deal than what he may believe he should get in free agency. But I'm just not sold on the idea that, one, San Francisco needs to put together a full court press to retain Dre Greenlaw. I also don't believe that the Niners should really put all their eggs in one basket in the case of trying to bring back Dre Greenlaw. If it happens, awesome. He's obviously a player you want to have back. He's a leader. What he brings to your defense, you saw this past year when he wasn't out there, not very good. When he was playing for 34 snaps, that defense looked like a top 10 defense once again. So the impact is certainly there when Dre Greenlaw is healthy. However, you just don't know. And when you get players that are in their 27 years old, inching closer to 28, 29, and you talk about maybe Dre Greenlaw wanting a 2 or 3 year deal, wanting to be the guy, I have a hard time believing, even if San Francisco puts together a full court press and tries to lure him back next year, that he even wants to come back. Now, I'm sure his heart's in San Francisco, and I'm sure he likes the idea of playing under Saleh once again, who was his DC his first 2 years as a Niner. If Greenlaw is adamant of wanting to be the guy, wear the green dot, he's never going to get that in San Francisco. So even if the Niners put together this full court press attack to get Greenlaw back, I have a hard time believing he comes back next year if he really wants to be the Mike linebacker, be the captain, kind of command his own ship, if you will, of a defense, which again, playing next to Fred Warner is really great work. Makes your life a heck of a lot easier, whoever you may be, whether it's Greenlaw, Winters, albeit it wasn't for Devondre Campbell for a lot of reasons, mainly his own. I just don't believe Dre Greenlaw is going to be back in 2025 despite the full court press effort Saleh is making. Again, I love Dre Greenlaw. I have his jersey. I want to see him back next year, but I just got a feeling that when you listen to what John Lynch said and they want to get younger, if there's a couple players, archetype-wise, to stick away from, it's players that have lingering injuries. And despite you liking Dre Greenlaw a lot, there are lingering injuries. And although John said he wants to bring back Dre too, and they're working on things, and they want to get a deal done before free agency, and I think they're being honest. I just don't know, that is some mixed messaging, unless they know some medicals that we don't know, which can certainly be the case. You can't in one breath say, let's get younger, and let's recalibrate, and let's get healthier and be more durable, then say in the same breath, let's go re-sign Dre Greenlaw. Or at least to a 2 or 3 year deal. Commit bigger money or longer years to him. This doesn't seem to be consistent, and I'm not sure for the San Francisco 49ers it's wise to preach both things at the exact same time, although, again, getting Greenlaw back would be awesome to see in 2025, which brings me to kind of a similar topic, which this comes of the way via ESPN. And during this time of the year, whether it's ESPN, Fox, Bleacher Report, even local places, your fan-sided, your Sports Illustrated, mainly the fan side of things with them, they toss things at the wall consistently. They just say, this guy and that guy and this guy and that guy, all these guys make sense. Cut this guy, cut that guy. I think I have seen Grant Cohn, you may like him, may dislike him, whatever. To his credit, he is a hard worker, and every single day, it's the San Francisco 49ers should re-sign Dre Greenlaw. The very next hour, it's why the San Francisco 49ers should not re-sign Dre Greenlaw. A lot of that's happening during this offseason, so you see some crazy things tossed out there at the wall. There was a report, or a CBS Sports said, the Minnesota Vikings are going to trade for Jair Alexander. It's like, why would the Green Bay Packers trade a 2-time Pro Bowler to their arch rival in the NFC North, who they want to compete with, who was in front of them in their own division last year? Again, crazy things get tossed out there during this time of the year, which ESPN is not afraid to do the exact same thing. And unfortunately, this comes via Nick Wagoner, who is awesome. He's a great guy, a phenomenal reporter. And when they were talking about who could be a player that needs to change the scenery in 2025, you'd be very shocked with who Nick Wagoner reported and said could be a player that could want to be or could need a change of scenery. ESPN's Nick Wagoner believes former 2020 first-round pick defensive tackle Javon Kinlaw needs a change of scenery, and returning to the San Francisco 49ers would be a good move for him. I'll use the entire quote here for you so I don't mislead you here. It says, "The Niners would welcome Kinlaw, who was slated for unrestricted free agency, back as part of their interior rotation if the price is right. The 2020 14th overall pick, Kinlaw was finally healthy for a full season in 2023, and he had some moments in big spots, finishing with 25 tackles, 3.5 sacks, and 3 passes defensed. But for him to have the chance to fully flourish, he probably needs to go somewhere where he can start and play more snaps rather than backing up Javon Hargrave or whoever else they keep in San Francisco." Again, really weird. I have a hard time believing that, like, when you hear what Nick Wagner says, that Kinlaw needs a change of scenery and returning to the Niners will be good for him, that'll mean it'd be good for San Francisco. Again, you cannot preach getting healthier, getting younger, and then saying, hey, get Javon Kinlaw back, who I like Kinlaw. He's unfortunately most known for his beef with the aforementioned Grant Cohn, which in retrospect is pretty sad and also pretty funny. If you have a sense of humor like mine, which is somewhat twisted. Kinlaw was supposed to be the DeForest Buckner replacement, was supposed to be the next, strong interior defensive lineman that can go get to the quarterback and, be a good run defender. But unfortunately, chronic knee issues, multiple knee injuries, could never stay healthy, and ultimately was right to be let go. Didn't pick up his fifth-year option. You can kind of tell there was this, maybe I kind of, wore out my welcome here to a certain degree. Javon Kinlaw should not be a San Francisco 49er in 2025. I know that Wagner says they would welcome him back at the right price. Now, at the right price for me is like, hey, I'll give you $2.5 million. I'm not giving you 4. I'm not giving you 5, because the odds are you play 6 games, you get hurt again. And I know he's been healthier in recent years, and maybe there's more reason to believe that only 27 years old defensive tackles usually peak a little later in their career. So maybe there is a reason to believe that Kinlaw could become something with the San Francisco 49ers in round number 2. But, this very much, if the Niners are in any way interested in bringing back Javon Kinlaw, this very much screams with like, hey, bro, I'm out partying. Come out partying too. And it's like, really? Or an even better example is, hey, man, I have a flight at 5 a.m. in the morning. Can you drive me there? And the guy's like, yeah, no problem. No problem. That's Robert Saleh. That's the San Francisco 49ers. Hey, Javon, need your help. Come be our depth interior defensive tackle. Help us out a lot. We really need you. And just like that friend that is not going to pick you up at 5 a.m. at your house, not going to drive you to the airport, that's Javon Kinlaw, who you want to be able to trust as a former first-round draft pick. You thought you could trust, and then at 5:30 in the morning, you're like, hey, dude, where the heck are you? He's like, oh, sorry, man, I just woke up. And you're like, my God, why did we ever think this was going to work? In the first place, when San Francisco drafted Kinlaw, he had knee injuries. He had chronic knee issues. Why did you ever think that was going to work for the 14th overall pick? Just not a great idea. If it's a minor injury, sure, but once you get into chronic, like, take this year, for example, right? A lot of people really want San Francisco to take Josh Simmons, the Ohio State offensive tackle. He has a patellar issue. That right there could be career damning. And again, I'm not saying he can't be great and he can't get over the hump, but when you come out of college, the idea of, wow, they're already injured. Not once, not an ankle sprain, I broke my thumb in a freak accident. No, like chronic knee issues, patellar injuries are never going to usually pan out well in the NFL if you're already injured pre-NFL career. So he's already shown to not be reliable. But let's just say that for the sake of conversation, the San Francisco 49ers are attempting to, because Saleh had him in San Francisco in 2020. He brought him to New York, couple years ago with the Jets, so let's just entertain the idea. Who is Javon Kinlaw in 2025? Not very good. I'll tell you that, for example. If you go to his PFF last year, he played 695 snaps, so pretty good number. He was really healthy last year. He played in 17 games, so maybe maybe his knees have caught up and he's feeling better. His health is there. Like, there is more positive notes to say for Javon Kinlaw's health in more recent years than his Niners tenure, albeit, and if you have Niners luck, he'll get hurt again in his first game back. Fingers crossed if they sign him. That doesn't happen, but played 17 games, just under 700 snaps. He had 30 total pressures. He had 5 sacks last year. He had 27 tackles. He had a 15% missed tackle rate, which is actually pretty good. He had 24 run stops. Really improved as a pass rusher, 68.2 pass rushing grade. However, that run defense grade is still atrocious. Again, the idea of signing Javon Kinlaw, in theory, with who he is now, isn't as bad as it was when he was here in San Francisco the first time. But again, going back to what John Lynch said, you want to get younger, you want to retool, recalibrate. Javon Kinlaw, and even to a certain degree, Dre Greenlaw, in the injuries they have, are usually people you want to stay away from. There's a big reason as to why, and Niner Media points out Eric Armstead here, who had plantar fasciitis. I get there was a high salary cap hit. They wanted to free up some money, but they were okay moving off of Eric Armstead because of the plantar fasciitis. He had the injury. You're older. You're aging. You're never healthy. And maybe there is this, things have changed. The winds have come for Dre Greenlaw.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
But if you're going to bring back Javon Kinlaw, you're going to bring back Javon Kinlaw, you want to bring back Solomon Thomas too, who last year played 460 snaps, had a pass rushing grade of 61.2, had a 41.5 run defense grade. Like, I'm not of the idea that, to me, recalibrating doesn't mean re-signing failed draft picks. You're going to bring back Ambry Thomas next year. You're going to go sign, Jalen Hurd and, all these guys that, you thought could be something but aren't. And again, not to say Kinlaw couldn't be something now. It's just, I think San Francisco needs a fresh start. This is one of the deepest defensive tackle classes ever. We're talking 6 rounds of oh my God. Sterling, look at that guy's butt. He's a dense mother you-know-whatter, and he's going to get at that quarterback and stop the run with ease at the NFL level. You talk about, again, recalibrating, retooling. You don't bring back failed. This is like when San Francisco had signed Kerry Hyder. Oh my God, 13 sacks, 10 sacks in 2020. Ho-ho! Goes and gets a big contract elsewhere with the Seahawks. Fails there. They bring him back and becomes a practice squad rotational piece. And I get he was older at the time, but it's why? What are we doing? Don't try to retread things that don't work. And Kinlaw didn't work the first time. I'm not erasing the idea it couldn't work this time, but I just don't like the prospects of re-signing players that, maybe have a bitter history here, or maybe in Kinlaw's case more specifically, just really haven't been reliable in their time. Yes, he'd be playing on grass, but maybe the turf in a way kind of helped him in MetLife, albeit would be odd. But, you look at what Kinlaw has been. He had relatively nice year in 2023 with San Francisco. But again, the run defense was so bad. Last year, to me, was his best year overall. Had his best run defense grade in his entire career. Similar pass rushing grade, although a pretty bad tackler last year when it came to comparing his 2023 and 2024 seasons. you could argue maybe he's hitting his stride at the age 27. And maybe you have Saleh say, nope, I want him back. That's my guy. I'll make him the fourth interior rusher, be a rotational piece. But when you look at what San Francisco can do, they need to find run defenders on the interior. They have to. And while that can certainly happen in the first round this year on the defensive tackle market, maybe you bring back DJ Jones, albeit Kinlaw will be a heck of a lot cheaper. Maybe there is this idea that, if Hargrave is released and can't be brought back, maybe Kinlaw is an option. But again, Kinlaw feels like a player that signs with the Detroit Lions or the New York Giants, or in a way, maybe even the Los Angeles Rams. I just don't like the prospects of bringing back Javon Kinlaw. Even if he is going to play well, I just don't think he's worth any risk. San Francisco really isn't in a money crunching phase, but they are in a let's save some money phase, and I just don't want to waste money. I'd rather take a chance on a 21-year-old, 22-year-old defensive tackle around 5 than Kinlaw. Because at least that player has some youth, there's some potential there. Even if Kinlaw is going to be, let's say Kinlaw plays 15 games next year and gives you a very similar season to what he was to what he had in 2024 with the Jets, that's cool. But I don't want to commit $6 million to a player that this really has never been, not really a fit, never played well. And look, let's say in the first round they get lucky and it's Mason Graham, or it's Kenneth Grant, or it's Walter Nolan, or it's one of these guys, James Pierce from Tennessee, albeit I don't think that'll happen. But let's say they get one of these top guys. If Kinlaw is your 4th defensive tackle, okay, it's fine. Which seems to be the case in regards to what Wagner's pointing out to, but I have a hard time believing they'll welcome him back. And yes, Kinlaw sounds like a saint. I can very well see him going the Chase Young route, go to New Orleans. He'll be part of that just terrible dead cap they have out there, which I think Kinlaw can be a good player still, but maybe it's the stench of his name that keeps me away, and maybe I'm being too jaded towards him now as a player. However, it just, would you want to bring back Javon Kinlaw? I don't think I would, but tell me down below. Maybe you want to bring back Javon Kinlaw and are open to the idea of it in 2025. However, the run defense is still pretty bad. If you go back to his rookie season and his sophomore season, his run defense grade was 46.9 and a 46.6. This past year with the Jets, 50.8. Even in 2023 with San Francisco, when they go to the playoffs, they're playing Philadelphia in the NFC Championship game, Kinlaw was getting tossed around by Philadelphia's offensive line. Now, I just wouldn't sign myself up for that. And again, maybe there is a prospect where he's better than he is, but just when I hear that name, he can come back to San Francisco, it's like, no, please. Don't let that happen. Don't make that happen. Don't put that evil on me, Nick Wagner at ESPN. I don't want that here. But first off, I want to let you know, before we get to the Deebo Samuel conversation, which is why it came here, it's over the thumbnail, I want to let you know to use the promo code right here on, is it your left, your right, whatever it may be. It's on my left. Promo code 49ers Access, 49ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com, and save yourself $20 off your first purchase, whether it's a baseball game, an NBA game, you want to pre-order some football tickets this summer, or even go to a concert with your family. Use that promo code and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. And if you want to perform like the GOAT, Jerry Rice, you want to be the greatest of all time, you want to be the anti-Javon Kinlaw, then you got to get yourself a can of GOAT Fuel. Whether you're an athlete like Rice or Kinlaw was, or a normal person like myself, GOAT Fuel can bring the best out of every single one of us. Click that link down below and grab yourself a can of GOAT Fuel to feel like the greatest of all time, and save yourself 10% off your purchase by using my link in the description. Okay, let's get to the meat and potatoes of today's show. Let's put away the small rumors, put away the potential things that could happen, and let's get to something that it seems like is going to happen, which is a massive shock to me, and I think everybody else in the football community, that being a Deebo Samuel trade. When Deebo Samuel said, "I want out," we all said, "Cool, bye, see you later." This is great news for San Francisco, but as things progressed, the cap hits got in, you had the analytics come in, the cap hits got talked about, and you dove into, what could this mean they cut him post June 1st and pre June 1st. The prospects of cutting Deebo Samuel seemed a lot more likely than a trade. But now the teeter-totter has shifted. The spectrum has moved, and we seem to be inching closer to a trade of Deebo Samuel, which could happen as soon as this weekend. According to Jordan Schultz of Fox Sports, while he is no longer feuding with Rappaport of NFL Network, they're staying away from Starbucks. Schultz said today that the Washington Commanders and the Houston Texans have quote-unquote significant interest in trading for Deebo Samuel. He also said this, with talks progressing in recent days. He also said the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Denver Broncos have also checked in on the wide receiver. I think 2 days ago it was reported that the Denver Broncos do not have interest in trading for Deebo Samuel. So I'm going to read this as the Broncos had checked in, realized the asking price, and said, never mind, which to me narrows down the destinations, the potential teams Deebo can get traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Washington Commanders, and the Houston Texans. Now, I do think if Deebo is released, that brings the Broncos back into the fray, but the Commanders, Texans, and Pittsburgh Steelers feel like the top three options for him as a trade partner with the San Francisco 49ers. But let's talk about each team, each fit. I like all these teams for Deebo Samuel. I think Deebo fits best when he has a receiver like Brandon Ayuk next to him. When you talk about Deebo Samuel's strengths, it's the jet sweeps, the end arounds, the screen passes. And in an odd way, Deebo Samuel was, I don't want to say rejuvenated, but he certainly was motivated last offseason, saw how the year was going, maybe got unmotivated during the year for whatever reason that could have been. Maybe it was the outcome of the record for San Francisco, but got unmotivated last year during the season. Stopped playing well. Then it kind of showed you what he can still do against the Lions and the Dolphins last year, which made you say, hey, where was this all year, brother? Obviously goes on social media and blames the team, in a way, the head coach and the quarterback, for his lack of production, albeit was not the case. It was his own fault. But I love the Texans, I love the Steelers, and I love the Washington Commanders for Deebo Samuel. Let's start with the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans need a wide receiver too. They have Nico Collins. They're going to lose Stephon Diggs. Tank Dell is probably going to miss the majority of next season. Got hurt late last year, which seemed to be a pretty gruesome knee injury. Hope he's okay. Great player when he's healthy. But the Texans need to have that number 2 wide receiver, and head coach DeMeco Ryans told Matt Barrows of The Athletic that, yeah, they like good players. Deebo Samuel is a good player. They have interest in him. So they point blank said, we do have interest in acquiring Deebo Samuel. Okay. Now, unfortunately for the San Francisco 49ers, just because you have interest in the player doesn't mean you can actually acquire said player. So looking at contracts currently, the Houston Texans only have $4.6 million in cap space. Maybe you can talk about cutting players, moving money around, shifting money around. They don't really have anybody on their books that you point to and say, yeah, that guy can get cut, this guy can get cut to save you some money. But I think that for the Houston Texans, they need Deebo Samuel, or a player like Deebo Samuel. You can argue that, trading for Deebo isn't really, like, when you talk about trades, right? It takes two to tango, but also you have to realize that teams may say, well, I'd rather have Amari Cooper and Devontae Adams and Keenan Allen over, or even Darius Slayton to a certain degree, depending on the team, may want those players over Deebo Samuel. So I don't think Deebo's market's too big, nor will it be this give us a first-round pick. It'll be much less, but maybe there is a way to get a higher-end pick. We'll talk about that in a second, which was pitched by Benjamin Solak of ESPN, who does pretty good work over there for The Sports Leader. That said, the Texans make sense. The Pittsburgh Steelers also trying to find that number 2 wide receiver. They have George Pickens. They got, unlike the Houston Texans, plenty of money to spend this year. $59.7 million. I do wonder if Deebo Samuel, when you talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, while Deebo is, they have connections, they wanted Ayuk last year. John Lynch respects Mike Tomlin a ton. Ayuk was almost a Pittsburgh Steeler. At the last second, Shanahan races upstairs and says, no, he'll sign. I could see maybe them saying, okay, if we can't get Ayuk, what about Deebo Samuel? But the Pittsburgh Steelers are a more interesting case because, the Commanders have their quarterback. The Texans have their quarterback. The Steelers don't have their quarterback. Now, the rumor mill is, the tea leaves say it's Justin Fields. That'll be their guy. But you don't know, and maybe that can sway them to not want to get Deebo or not pay high for Deebo, but they have plenty of money. They could fit Deebo's contract in their books this year. And I think could be open to an extension, albeit I don't know what Deebo wants for an extension. He hasn't really talked about money. It's been more of an opportunity issue, but maybe he wants to get paid again after this year's over with. In May, view this as, I'm not getting the opportunity in San Francisco, surrounded by Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle, Jennings, Pearsall, and whenever Ayuk comes back, maybe Deebo views this as, if I can go somewhere else for 1 year and get the opportunity, play in a good system, I can build my market value back up, then hit the market next offseason and get paid big again. I think of the 3 teams on here, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are more prone to give Deebo the opportunity over a team like the Texans, where Deebo is the number 2. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers, if Fields is the quarterback, would play a heavy screen game, end-around game, would kind of feed Deebo. We saw in previous years, they had Cordarrelle Patterson. They want to run the rock. They're maybe losing Najee Harris, so acquiring Deebo Samuel can make some sense. I think between Houston and the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Steelers are much more of a favorite for Deebo. They have the money. They have the need. The quarterback fit could also make some more sense. And for Deebo's case, I also am not sure if he has any leverage in these trade negotiations. Could he say no? Papa J says here, what about the Raiders? Let's say the Las Vegas Raiders, Pete Carroll and Tom Brady come calling, Spy Tech come calling, and they're like, hey, you know what? We didn't get Matthew Stafford. We're going to sign Russell Wilson. We're going to get Sam Darnold. We also want Deebo Samuel. We have Brock Bowers. We want to get the kind of number 2 receiver in our offense. What would Deebo say? Let's say of the 3 teams that want Deebo Samuel, could the Raiders offer the most? Could they say, hey, we'll give you a 4th-round pick? And San Francisco's like, yes, let's do that. And Deebo's like, I ain't playing there. I don't know how much leverage he has. I would assume because he asked for the trade and they're giving him the permission to go out there and seek a trade on the market. And John Lynch kind of saying there is no hard feelings. They're going to honor his request. I don't think they would try to burn Deebo like that. Although, business is business, and if some team says, we'll give you whatever you want, here, blank check, although that's not going to happen, they'll give you a higher-end pick compared to what the Texans and Pittsburgh can give you. I don't think Deebo would go to anybody team. I think the Texans and Steelers and Commanders are kind of who he wants to go to. Deebo is searching for a trade. There's a reason why you hear the Texans, Steelers, and Commanders. Those are probably teams he wants to talk to, right? So I think of the three, Pittsburgh makes the most sense, but that does not leave out the Commanders just yet, because the Commanders, like Pittsburgh, really, really wanted Brandon Ayuk last year. Not sure exactly what the compensation would have been, albeit we heard that San Francisco wanted the first-round pick for Ayuk last year. Nobody offered that, which maybe the Commanders wanted to give a high-end number 2, which they had last year, picking at number 2 in the NFL draft in the first round. They have the quarterback. I'm sure Deebo Samuel watched and heard Brandon Ayuk rave about Jaden Daniels in the preseason and in the offseason, and also saw what he did during the NFL season. I would like to think Deebo's like, hey, they have Terry McLaurin. They're losing Diami Brown. It seems like this offseason I can fit there really well. They're an up-and-coming team. I'm sure there may be an opportunity for revenge if he wants to play San Francisco again in the playoffs next year. They can both get back there and match up. So, maybe that's an opportunity. The Commanders have plenty of money to spend. I think they have the most, or the second, or one of the top tier salary caps. They have, if I can see here, they have $81.9 million. What is that, like third in football behind the Raiders and behind the Patriots? So they have the money. They have the need. I'm a little curious as to how Adam Peters does business and would do business with the Niners, knowing how John Lynch operates. Maybe he'd play hardball as well. I think, like, if I had to conjure up a trade, because Renee asks here, what could the Niners get for Deebo Samuel? A 4th-round pick or a 5th-round pick? Maybe. I am of the assumption that if you're looking for draft pick compensation this year, you want the instant gratification of trading away Deebo Samuel, you are probably looking for a day 3 pick. Maybe a late 5th rounder, probably a 6th rounder. Maybe you can get a 6th and 7th, but I think that 6th round pick is probably what is likely at the moment. That said, and I know Michael asks here, Panthers and Titans, what about them for Deebo? I don't think the Titans want to pay another receiver big money. They're already paying Calvin Ridley that. Burks can never stay healthy. They're probably not going to draft Cam Ward. At least that's not what I'm understanding of. I don't think getting Deebo makes sense. Like, they're going to bring back Mason Rudolph. They got Will Levis. Like, they don't really know what they're doing. Or they're trying to rebuild things out there. The Panthers make more sense. They're an offense that, has Leggett. They're up and coming. Bryce Young looked like he turned a corner late last year and gave some teams some fits. So I can see that he'd be close to home. However, the Texans are a contending team. The Steelers are a contending team for a wild card spot. The Commanders are a contending team for maybe the NFC East next year if everything goes as well and plan for them against Philadelphia. Certainly gave them fits this past year. I don't know if Deebo would want to go to a team that's not ready to contend, hence why I don't think the Panthers or the Titans make that much sense. I think Deebo sought after the Texans, the Steelers, and the Commanders. That's why you hear, significant interest. It's from the teams, but also Deebo's like, I want to go to these teams. These teams are going to give me the opportunity. They're going to give me a higher salary or extend me this year. I think he sought those teams out and they said, let's do a deal kind of thing. We have a question here by Dre Sports. Dre Sports, good friend. How you doing, brother? He asks, would it be possible to restructure Deebo? He says, Devo, whip it good, brother. Deebo's contract and work on a sign-in trade that would get the Niners out underneath all this dead cap money. Let me ask you this. Does Deebo Samuel owe the 49ers any of that. I don't think so. I think Deebo said, I want out now. I'm not going to do you favors. We're on good terms, but I am no longer a San Francisco 49er. I don't owe you anything. And get me out of here as soon as you can. Cut me or trade me. I want out. Now, maybe if they're like, look, Deebo, we can get you to your number one option, but we got to redo your contract, maybe he'd say yes, but there's a reason as to why they let him go out there and seek a trade himself. His agent is talking to teams of, yes, would you want me? Would you trade for me? But also money. Them letting Deebo go out there and seek a trade and talk to other teams, a lot of that has to do with the financial side of things. Money. Guaranteed money. An extension. So I don't think Deebo would do San Francisco any favors, and I think that any deal that's redone would be done post-trade with whoever he goes to if he is indeed traded. But I want to get back to Renee's question here. A 4th or a 5th round pick. I think there is an avenue. And I'm getting this from ESPN's Benjamin Solak. Good article today detailing Deebo's trade value on the market. He mentioned this idea, that San Francisco should forego the idea of getting a draft pick this year. Forget this year, for example. Just forget it entirely. You have 10 draft picks. There's no reason as to why you need more draft picks this year. Now, obviously, it gives you maneuverability up and down the draft board, but you have 10 picks, like you're good there. Teams, when they know where they're picking, usually tend to hold on tighter to their draft picks. Like, for example, right, the Houston Texans picked 25, 58, 89, 127 overall this year. The Pittsburgh Steelers picked 21, 52, 83, 122 this year. The Commanders pick 29th, 61st. Like, they don't want to give up draft picks where they know they're picking. It gives them some idea as to their draft board, who will be there when they're picking. It almost gives them an idea that, hey, we're in the 4th round. We like this DT. We like this running back. It gives you an idea as to who you can interview during the combine. And it makes you more confident as to, okay, there's value here. Teams do not usually value further draft picks. Next year's draft pick. Now, if it's a 1st round pick, obviously, yes. High-end compensation, yes. But when you get into round 3, 4, and 5, teams are much more willing to move future draft picks than current draft picks. And again, when you hear the Houston Texans, for example, picking at 58, 89, 127, in 2026, they have no idea where they're picking. And in their mind, they're saying, hey, we could pick 32nd in the 1st round if everything goes as planned, which pushes back all their other draft picks. So Benjamin Solak detailed this morning that the San Francisco 49ers should, yes, trade Deebo, but look to acquire future 1st round picks, not current draft, or future draft picks, not current draft picks. Look for 4th and 5th round picks next year. Look for 3rd round picks in 2027, right? Don't value this year's draft very much in Deebo trade conversations, because teams will say, a pick at 127, which is a 4th rounder this year, that means a little more to me than a 3rd rounder next year, because they can say, well, that 3rd round pick can be the last pick of the 3rd round. So I think it's a great idea. I think San Francisco should go that route, be open to the idea of not getting instant gratification for trading away Deebo Samuel. Usually you don't see that. Oftentimes you see trades happen during the preseason or during training camp for like a 7th round pick that year, because again, you have no idea where you'll be when the season's over with, but teams know where they're picking now. I think if San Francisco, let's say the asking price this year for them, for Deebo Samuel, is a 3rd round pick, teams may say, no way in hell am I giving you a 3rd round pick for Deebo Samuel, but next year, I'll give you a 3rd round pick. I'll give you a 4th round pick, no problem. because in their mind, they're like, who cares about next year? I want to win this year. And teams like the Commanders, the Texans, and the Pittsburgh Steelers all believe they can win this year. So I think maybe foregoing the 2025 draft pick compensation for Deebo makes sense, and viewing 2026 as the year you can maybe get some draft picks for Deebo instead. Michael says here, send Deebo to Buffalo or the Chargers. Buffalo, I'm not sure what their cap situation is. The last time the Bills traded for a receiver was Amari Cooper last year. Things didn't go as planned. There were some injuries there, didn't play great. I don't think he fits. They just re-signed Khalil Shakur this offseason. They just drafted Keon Coleman. I'm not sure if they have a fit for Deebo Samuel. The Chargers make a little more sense. I'm one of the few people that believe that I think the Chargers were one of the teams poking around Brandon Ayuk earlier this offseason, last week or so, albeit there's no confirmation there. I think they do want to find, the underneath guy. Deebo makes sense. I just don't know if they want to give big money to him or extend him. But Harbaugh, Niners, obviously there's some connections there. But my bigger question is, when can a deal take place? We all know San Francisco wants to avoid giving Deebo Samuel that roster bonus this year. They want to avoid a higher cap hit this year. They want to carry over as much cap into next year and avoid losing $15 million this year. Jed York is like, I don't want to pay a player who's not going to be here $15 million. All that makes sense. And we got a rather interesting report maybe a few hours ago from ESPN or NBC Sports. NBC Sports is Matthew Berry, former ESPN fantasy football guru, now NBC Sports fantasy football guru Matthew Berry. He said this. He's putting together his late night total rumors at the Combine column. Said it'll come out next week. But one of the rumors that he heard was that maybe the San Francisco 49ers will trade Deebo Samuel very soon. He said multiple teams are interested, and the Washington Commanders are one of them. So he said maybe might be out of date by the time of next week, which I think is a big indicator. He's talking about Deebo Samuel, that by the time his article comes out next week, Deebo Samuel could already be traded, which means as earliest as Monday or Sunday night, and as latest as next Monday or Sunday night, or I guess 2 Mondays and Sundays later. Deebo Samuel, according to Matthew Berry, could get traded as earliest as next week. That's awesome. I love that. I think it ramps things up. I think we're going to see movement here really quickly. I think it's a great thing for San Francisco. I talked about in the last 2 weeks or so about the faster you get off of Deebo Samuel, get him out of your locker room, get him away from the Niners HQ in Santa Clara, and just erase the idea of Deebo Samuel being on your team in 2025, the better. And Matthew Berry thinks as soon as next week, Deebo Samuel could get traded. He specifically says the Washington Commanders, which I'm sure more credence to the idea that the Washington Commanders are the favorite for Deebo and maybe being the most aggressive trying to acquire Deebo Samuel this offseason. And I love that. I love that Deebo Samuel could get traded by next week. I love the idea of him going to Washington. They need a receiver. They got to have a receiver. The money fits. The draft pick compensation works. For example, you go to this year for Washington, they pick 29th, 61st, I think 79th, 148th, 207th, 238th, and 250th. There's so many picks you can have there. Again, if you want to go to 2026, it's not set in stone just yet for them, but I think the Commanders and the Pittsburgh Steelers are, to me, the two favorites to land Deebo Samuel. And I think that it's going to happen soon. San Francisco, if you look at what San Francisco is doing this offseason, they avoided having to extend Lenore during this time period pre-free agency, did it during the year. They are trying to get Brock Purdy's deal done in April-ish. They want to get that thing done out of the way, right? They want to move on here. They are trying to get George Kittle signed. Whether it's during training camp, they're going to get that deal done preseason too. They also want to get Deebo Samuel out of the way. All the things they're doing. They want to get Dre Greenlaw signed. They're trying to get their guys taken care of. They signed Ben Barch. Like, they got their left guard already re-signed. They want to bring back Brock Purdy to a bigger contract. They want to redo George Kittle. They want to get rid of Deebo Samuel, all before free agency begins or shortly after it. They want to make sure in-house they're cleaned out or they're taken care of entirely. I think things are going to ramp up soon. I think Deebo is good as gone. It sounds like at the moment a trade is the top priority for both teams, the Commanders, Texans, and San Francisco. And I think reading tea leaves, like, they are ready to just erase Deebo Samuel from their minds entirely, and that starts by getting him off your team maybe as soon as next week. But tell me down below, do you think, one, Deebo Samuel gets traded between the Washington Commanders, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Houston Texans? Which one of those teams does Deebo Samuel go to in 2025, and what do you believe his draft pick compensation will be that San Francisco gets back in return? Do you think it's going to be a 2025 draft pick, 6th, 7th round pick? Do you agree with the idea that San Francisco should be open to taking 2026 higher draft pick compensation instead? I think that's the best option. But what about Javon Kinlaw? Would you bring Javon Kinlaw back to Dre Greenlaw? Are you open and all for the full court press approach of trying to bring back Dre Greenlaw? Tell me down below in the comments what you think. I want to thank Papa J, Michael Cataranzo, Dre Area Sports, Renee Rodriguez, J.D. Durham, Gabriel Pereira, so many of you here in the YouTube chat. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Go ahead and follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. Papa J says he's going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I can certainly see that, and I would not be shocked whatsoever. And if you want to see Deebo Samuel play next year, like Michael says also, the Pittsburgh Steelers, well, you want to use that promo code 49ers Access, 49ers Access, 49ESSACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Also, buy a can of goat fuel down below using our link and save yourself 10% off your purchase there. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave that review, drop your comments in the YouTube chat and down below on youtube.com, wherever you're watching or listening. Give us that 5-star review on the audio podcasting platform. And as always, my name is Sterling Bennett. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Enjoy your Saturday and Sunday. And as always, until next time, stay faithful.